Hello, and I'm back with another Emotional Trauma Support Hub presentation. This is on cognitive dissonance. So welcome, and I used to be the convener and organizer for the Emotional Trauma Support Hub group that is now moved on with new organizers. This is a presentation I did in 2018. So let's define cognitive dissonance within a narcissistic environment. Cognitive dissonance is when people hold a core belief that is very strong. When they are presented with evidence that works against that belief, the new evidence cannot be accepted. It would create a feeling that is extremely uncomfortable, called cognitive dissonance. And because it is important to protect the core belief, they will rationalize, ignore, and even deny anything that doesn't fit in with that core belief. This is by a psychologist called Frantz Fanon. And its cognitive dissonance is also used in a political sphere, and pretty much can happen in a conversation with somebody. Within a narcissistic framework, cognitive dissonance begins in the idealization phase. Dissonance is a tactic used by the narcissist and is consistent as a form of emotional abuse. For the target, or i.e. victim, it creates a sense of unreality, confusion, and a mindset of not trusting their own perception of the situation. This result is a state of anxious confusion. An example of cognitive dissonance. An abuser professes love and divines a marriage date with his or her partner. The partner is courted, romanced, and ultimately falls in love with the abuser, not knowing that the abuser has ulterior motives. The partner envisions wedding details and enjoys the courtship, flowers, and being placed on a pedestal. The abuser then suddenly makes a comment denying that he or she said anything about getting married. He or she goes on to say that the partner is crazy for thinking that. Blame is then projected upon the partner, and the partner is dizzy with confusion, recalling that indeed his or her significant other did indeed discuss wedding bells and a future together. This is also known as gaslighting, a tactic that the narcissists and toxic cluster B personality disorders are well known employing. The narcissist targets the victim of abuse with doubts about their own reality, thus disorientating them in order to maintain control and power. Hence, gaslight and cognitive dissonance go hand in hand. The gaslighting approaches by the narcissist is often verbal and emotional, intended to hurt. Gaslighting is often a favoured form of abuse by the narcissist, as it makes the victim question their own sense of self. Cognitive dissonance can lead to depression, adjustment disorder, and anxiety disorder. Why people stay in this environment? To a logical person who's never been through something like this, it's easy to say, why didn't you just leave? It's because the victim has become addicted to their abuser. Oxytocin, known as the bonding biochemical, spreads out in the body. It becomes a firm anchor within addiction. Endogenous opioids, pleasure, pain, withdrawal, and dependence. Corticotropin released factor, withdrawal, stress. Dopamine, craving, seeking, wanting. With such a mix of strong neurochemistry in dysregulated states, it is extremely difficult to manage emotions or making logical decisions. Of course, the brain responds differently in stressful situations. Our brain is extremely responsive to what is happening in our environment. It releases chemicals in response to the narcissist's behavior and our own interpretations of it. If they pull away, oxytocin responds in ways that someone in a normal relationship would not experience. The narcissist creates an emotionally charged environment. Context is everything when it comes to the brain. That's why I said in my former relationship, how can you make sense of the senseless? I couldn't, not for so long. It's only after leaving the relationship, after some time apart, that I started realizing that I was in an addictive situation. The trauma bond. Addiction to the narcissist is also known as the trauma bond. There will be an intense craving, a heightened value attributed to the abuser, and a hyper-focus on the relationship and conflict resolution. So the victim will always try to fix, and the narcissist will always use his or her toxicity to keep the game happening, because this game feeds their ego, feeds the animal within them. The victim's thoughts will often follow to make sense of the feelings. Their brains turn to self-deception and rationalizations to resolve cognitive dissonance. And of course, this is not healthy because your brain is not thinking logically. The victim will offer excuses to themselves, family and friends to explain away or minimize the narcissist's violating behaviors. The victim goes through emotional dysregulation. Oxytocin is very responsive to our social environment. It is contextual. Therefore, psychological or physical stresses can result in the release of oxytocin. Oxytocin can rise under negative social conditions, causing a person to seek out better social circumstances. Endogenous opioids are driving feelings of pain and loss, causing a desperate need for relief. Within this type of relationship, there's a constant battle in our bodies that can lead to physical disease due to stress and dysregulation. This disease equals dis-ease. Complex PTSD, which is post-traumatic stress disorder. It is widely accepted that long-term emotional abuse leads to complex traumas in the body and in the mind. Emotional abuse can be classified as a psychological injury. If cognitive dissonance is not rectified, it does lead to conditions such as complex post-traumatic stress disorder and manic depression. Dissociation. Long-term cognitive dissonance can lead to dissociation, which is a mental process of disconnecting from one's thoughts, feelings, memories, or sense of identity. When a person experiences severe emotional trauma over a long-term period, it can cause a break with reality, which stops the trauma memories and lowers fear, anxiety, and shame. This type of disruption is also known as a defensive measure. So this is another explanation of cognitive dissonance. When people notice that the belief is confirmed, their effort is exaggerated, or their compliance runs against their own attitudes, people often reduce the tension between their behavior and their attitude by changing the attitude in the direction of their action. For example, they continue to believe that what has been disconfirmed, or they adopt attitudes that justify their effort of compliance and respectivity. Here's the negative script of cognitive dissonance within an emotional trauma patient. You're having a hard time you're having a hard time going no contact because you still feel on some level the notion that at some point in time you actually meant as much to him, her, as he, she meant to you. And his continued love bombing reinforces this. Everything he or she has said to you, he and she has also said to other targets in his or her life. And we have all heard it all before. You're the best I've ever had. We really had something special. I still miss you. You were the most important part of my life for a long time. I tell you everything because we're such good friends. Blah, blah, blah. Recovery from cognitive dissonance can happen, and it must happen. Realize you have been dealing with a toxic personality. Realize that all that you shared with this person was an illusion. To not blame yourself and to not self-demean yourself over and over. The relationship and the love within this relationship that you felt was based on lies. Not on your part, but theirs. The feeling you felt was real for you, but the other person was fake, a mirage. But surely the times we shared was real. I felt it. I never felt anything like that with anyone else. But I know this one particular time it was so intimate and real. It had to mean something to him, her. Maybe I am the best she's ever had, like he or she says. Or I was the one he and she loved above all others. But we just couldn't make it work because of certain incompatibilities. Her commitment issues, her self-esteem issues, her trust issues. Letting go of the illusion helps break cognitive dissonance. It's about letting go. That's the first step in healing. You have nothing to feel guilty for. There's no obligations, no justifications. You don't owe the narcissist anything. You owe yourself a whole heap. Let go of the illusion. Realize that there was a lot of fakeness. So 10 steps I took into recovery. No contact. Reviewed my personal boundaries and reset new boundaries. Got the toxicity out of my systems through seeking psychological therapy, understanding what I had been through, acknowledged the truth, and forgave myself. Did a self-inquiry. Real change can only be done as a result of deep introspection. Healing the inner child. Shifting my focus from the narcissist to my own life, my own needs, and my own dreams for a better future. Patience. It took a lot of patience. Healing just doesn't happen. The victim goes through stages of deprogramming. That is why I say trauma, emotional trauma inflicted by a narcissist is pretty substantial. You're going from a loss hurt to a loss adjustment. I also had to take on radical acceptance. No, I just can't get over it, but I will accept reality, the reality of now, and accept that there were reasons for it, and I will build a life again worth living. Cognitive dissonance cannot be overcome. You have to seek help. You have to let go and disentangle the facts from fiction in the relationship. It can resolve into resonance. I took this relationship and this experience as a life lesson, and I have said never again. I like this from Renee Smith. I'm not crazy, I was abused. I'm not shy, I'm protecting myself. I'm not bitter, I'm speaking my truth. I'm not hanging on to the past, I've been damaged. I'm not delusional, I lived a nightmare. I'm not weak, I was trusting. I'm not giving up, I'm healing. I'm not incapable of love, I'm giving. I'm not alone, I see you all here. I'm fighting this. So that was on cognitive dissonance. I hope that something within this helped you. I'll be back again soon.